So thanks, Mr. Wall, for that. I do believe it's on now.
Yes.
Yep. Good. All right. Thank you.
There are 3 watching now. I'm one of them. I always, anytime I stream any of my concerts or anything, I always have a double, making sure it's streaming correctly.
Okay.
Yes.
I see that.
Good.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm getting the echo. I'm going to turn that off.
I'm one of them.
Okay. There we go. So, Amy, you don't want Jean in as a panelist, right?
No.
Okay. So let's see.
You can see. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, is everybody ready?
Yep.
Good.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Meet the Candidates Night, sponsored by Vestal District Council. Before we get started, just let me introduce myself and tell you a little bit about Vestal District Council. I'm Amy McDonald, and I am president of Vestal, of the District Council, and also a parent in the district. I have a 8th grader, an 11th grader, and a daughter who graduated last year. Vestal District Council is a volunteer organization comprised of representatives from all our PTAs and PTOs in each of the buildings. And we meet monthly to discuss what's working in our schools, what's not working in our schools, and find ways to support our students and our families. We also, we always have a Board of Ed rep come to our meetings and a member of the administration come when possible. Some of the other things we do, we provide at least one scholarship to a graduating senior every year, a senior who will be going into the field of education. We also, you may have heard of the District Council Awards, where we honor 2 members of each school community for going above and beyond and making the schools a better place. And in the past, we've supported the district with their mental health nights when they showed angst, when they showed, I'm drawing a blank right now, but we provide as much support to that as possible. And as a service to the community, every year we host Meet the Candidates, which is a chance for the candidates running for the Board of Education to talk to you, the voters, and tell them a little bit more about themselves and why they're running and their views on various issues in the district. Before I forget, the vote this year is next Tuesday, May 18th, and all voting will be at in the gym at Central Junior High on Main Street, basically the admin building, from noon to 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are available, and instructions on how to register for one of those or request a ballot is on the district website. Our format tonight, each candidate will have a chance to introduce themselves, and then I will start asking questions of each candidate. Each candidate will have the chance to answer every question, and we will answer in alphabetical order, rotating who begins the answers. The questions have come from our district council reps, our PTOs and PTAs, and questions that have been emailed to the district council account. So without further ado, we will begin with introductions. So we will start with you, Dr. Agneshwar.
Hi, my name is Dhruv Agneshwar. I've been in this community since 1993, although I grew up here and I'm a product of Vestal schools, graduated Vestal High in 1979. My children both are products of Vestal schools. They graduated in 2013 and 2015. I have been in private practice in OBGYN in this community since 1993. I own my own business called Sante Comprehensive Women's Healthcare. It's located on Main Street in Johnson City. I have 11 employees. I run the business. It's my own business. I don't work for either hospital, although I do participate in healthcare at both institutions. I feel like we're very successful. I've been a part of the community for a long time, although most of my community work is centered around healthcare. I've been on the UHS Foundation Board. I've been the chairman of my department for 8 years. I've been on the medical executive committee at UHS. I haven't had a lot of time to do any volunteer work in any way, but I guess taking care of poor indigent population and people who are needing healthcare is part of that. I have a very busy practice, and I think it's time in my life to focus on other things other than medicine and maybe give back a little bit to the community. I think I bring a different point of view from being a medical doctor. I think I have a different perspective on certain issues. I'm also a parent of 2 children who went to school in this community. I have many patients of mine who are also educators from other school districts, and so I get a sense of what goes on in other districts in this area as well. But I'm running because I feel like I can make a difference. I feel like I can bring a different point of view, especially now in the midst of a pandemic, more from a health. I'm by no means a COVID expert, but I feel like being in medicine, I can bring a little different perspective and different points of view to the board.
Thank you. Kathy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Egan, and I was born and raised in the Vestal School District. I attended college outside of Buffalo at Damon College, and I did a brief stint across the river. It felt like the Pacific Ocean, and then returned to Appalachian. And so now I have 2 kids, one that graduated last year, and my daughter Beth, and my son Paul. He attends Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. And my daughter Beth is scheduled to graduate Vestal in the year 2020. And both kids were active in Vestal sports, Irish dance, social activities. Paul's a volunteer EMT in Appalachian, and I'm a true taxi mom. I began my career as a physical therapist 27 years ago at UHS, and I partnership with many different places in the community, different companies in the community, to benefit the employees with overall wellness and safety. And most recently, this past year, we've all been a little redeployed lately. I have spent my time in the UHS COVID Command Center this past year. My community involvements include being a lector and member of Our Lady of Sorrows Church over 35 years. I'm a member of the Ladies Ancient Order of Hibernians. I'm an Irish dance mom and continue playing soccer, not very well. And I'm a terrible soccer player and terrible golfer, but I love it. I'm a past president of the Tioga Hills PTA, and have coached the kids in both soccer and t-ball, which they did not pursue. I would say I'm running for school board because now is the time to make the difference. I want to make a positive impact on the education and the future of our leaders, our innovators, our future scientists, our writers, our artists, our musicians, and our tradespeople. And I want to kind of make sure that Vestal is leading the way and not scrambling. So yes, I want to make sure it's the best place to work and the best place to learn.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, first of all, thank you, Amy, for setting this up. I'm sure all of us really appreciate that. So thank you for doing that. My name's Eric O'Clair, and I'm married to Michelle for 24 years. We have 3 children. Alex is in college, his first year. Andrew's a junior, and Jessica is a freshman. We've lived in the district for 17 years, and I'm in the forest products industry. I work for Wagner Lumber. I'm the head forester there and oversee procurement in 6 states, pretty much from here east and south. I have a master's in business. I have a 4-year degree in forestry. And as far as community service, I served as the Tioga Terrace Civic Association president for 6 years. And coaching, I've coached all the kids from T-ball all the way up through teeners. And I really, truly enjoyed that. And I think the thing that I really found really fruitful for me is the impact that you can make on kids. But I've grown to realize that the impact isn't only on kids, but it's also within the community and others. Hence why I want to run for the board. I was going to get back involved into the Tioga Terrace Civic Association, and then I got thinking, maybe I ought to give it a shot with the board. I know there's a lot of disgruntled parents, and the one thing that I do well at work is I love to see the dynamics of teams. I like to understand why. And I feel there's a lot of people out there that fall short of asking the question why. They take something at face value and they just agree or they disagree. I always say, what if we chose to ask one more question, go to that next level and ask why? Why do you feel that way? Why are we doing this? And I think if we were able to do that as a community, as a board, I'm not saying the current board doesn't do that now, but I think a lot of this would dissipate within time. So I'm excited to run for the board. I feel that I can definitely keep the board at the table. I'm not one that's going to take yes for an answer. I will stay there and I will stay at the table until we find out what the resolution is. I don't always have to agree with the other person. My goal is to make sure that we as a board serve the people, serve the kids, and serve all the constituents for our community and the Vestal School District.
Thank you, Eric. Dino? You have to unmute yourself, Dino. You're still muted.
Hello again. My wife Kim and I have been married for about 38 years, and we decided to retire to Vestal, and we've been here for 7 years. We absolutely love it here. And I was in education. I was a science teacher for over 30 years. And I always wanted to be part of a Board of Ed, and I wanted to give to the community that I lived in. And while I was working, I just didn't feel like I would be able to dedicate the proper amount of time necessary. So in my retirement, I ran 3 years ago for the Board of Ed, and I've been on the board. And I have been actively participating in the board. I have either the or one of the best attendance records. And I also belong to a few of the committees that we volunteer for. And I also, just so folks don't think I'm a slouch, I believe that in my first year, I may have even received an award for the amount of training classes that I went to and seminars. So I feel good about being on the board. I feel like I've been able to give a lot of the background I had from teaching in 3 of different districts. And even currently, I'm a substitute teacher in another few districts around the area. And it's enabled me to have a lot of contacts. So I do get a lot of information and resources from Albany and from the local communities. And just wanted to add that I am really happy being part of the Vestal Board of Education, and I would love to serve for another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Hello. My name is Jeffrey Wall. I, like many of the other candidates, am born and raised in Vestal. I apparently am the youngest one. I graduated in 2001. So after I graduated, I'm part of the 9/11 generation. I served. So I am a graduate of the Defense Language Institute in Monterey. So I am part of the Russian exchange from Vestal. I'm one of the last who went to Borovici from the Binghamton Borovici exchange. So I was a Russian and several other languages. I'm a polyglot. And so I am a retired Navy chief. So only 10% of all those who serve in the military make the, it's by a congressional act. You have to, the higher echelons of the military are capped at how many people can achieve the rank of E70, E9. So I have 3 kids in the district. My oldest will be in 10th grade next year. My daughter will be in 9th grade, and my youngest will be in 5th grade starting next year. I am currently the director of the Binghamton Baroque Orchestra. The chairman of the Southern Tier Music Teachers Association. I'm currently the director of the Windsor High School program. I've been an assistant baseball coach. Through my military leadership, I was in charge of training linguists throughout the military in various facets. And I was also a sexual assault victim advocate through multiple states. So I have a very unique perspective as far as leadership and accountability training, which I think will bring a different perspective to boards. I've also been a treasurer for the Phelps Mansion, so I have 501c3 training. So I bring a very unique perspective that most people don't have, which I think will help the board bring a new direction and help the kids go forward.
Thank you. And before I ask the first question, I just want to let everyone know that's watching, if you'd like to ask a question at all through the evening, you can enter it in the question and answer window at the bottom of your screen. Okay, Dr. Agneshwar, we start with you. And I like to start with something positive. What do you think the district's greatest strengths are? How will you engage the Vestal community to improve upon or maintain these strengths?
Okay, so let's go back to when I was in the Vestal School District. When I was in the Vestal School District in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't much diversity. There's a whole lot of that now. We have parents and children from all walks of life. And I remember I still joke with people, I was the only Indian in my school and nobody knew how to pronounce my name. Now it's become fairly commonplace. That's one of the strengths that we have in our district. We also have a great faculty. I still remember very fondly some of my teachers that I had, and one happens to be on the school board now. My children went through the school district. I think they had a top-notch education. Could we improve? We could always improve. And I think, other districts in the area have sort of caught up to us in Vestal. And some people believe that some districts have surpassed us. And I don't think we're better than that. And I think we have some of the best educators, some of the best teachers. We have the facilities. There's so many strengths and potential strengths. Did you ask me about weaknesses? Because
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Just the positive right now.
Without sounding nostalgic, I get it. Back in the 70s, we used to win football championships, and it was us and UE at the time, and I get it. And I don't want to sit here and talk about old movies and things like that. But going forward, I think the programs that we have in the district, compared to other districts our size, and not just here locally, but in the state, I think we offer a lot of different programs, whether it be classes, whether it be sports, whether it be clubs, opportunities to do things differently. For a district our size, I think that's a big strength. And again, diversity. It's gotten a lot different than it was when I went to school here.
Thank you. Kathy? Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, folks. I tend to agree completely with Dr. Agneshwar. It's a very diverse population now compared to 30 years ago, and or even more when I grew up here. I have to say I wasn't set on sending my children to Vestal School District. I was born and raised on Juneberry Road, and I ended up going to Seton Catholic Central. And I was thinking that with my children, and I will tell you, we enrolled them in Tioga Hills, and thinking that we would, give it a try and see where it went. And I never looked back. I was worried about being a number. We were never a number at Vestal. We walked in the office and they knew my children, they knew my name, they knew who their teacher was. We always felt like we were part of a big family. And from that point on, there was never any hesitation. Vestal School District has always excelled in academics. It has always been supportive of the kids in, with their endeavors. I was proud. I was proud to have the kids attend Vestal and be part of that class, of a hard class last year of 2020. So I think Vestal has a lot to offer. I think it's diverse, not only in its people, but also it's got to be one of the largest school district with where we're located, just the amount of mileage from Vestal Hills to Tioga Hills and everywhere in between. So we have a lot to offer, and we need to make sure that going forward, going down the road, we are excelling. We are leaders in where we need to be.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes, when we moved here 17 years ago, we looked at several different school districts. And we ended up settling, obviously, with Vestal, but it was a toss-up between Vestal and ME. Mainly, the reason was for the academics, very strong academics, and also very strong athletics. And I think a lot of people in our district choose Vestal because of the academics and athletics. If you look at the state scores with Vestal, we score very high in New York State for the size of school that we are. So that's definitely a strength of Vestal's. If you look at the extracurricular activities with clubs and everything, and we're talking about diversity as well. And I think that's part of diversity too, is it seems like Vestal is always out there on the forefront, trying to make sure there's some kind of activity for every person that attends Vestal. If when my son went to school, they had a list of 200 clubs available. I'm not sure how many clubs Vestal has, but I know from what I hear through middle school, elementary school, and even in high school, there's plenty of opportunity for that. Whether it's music, our music department is very, very strong, and also the diversity as far as the students go. I think it's great that we have such a diverse population, and it appears to be that I'm sure there are some issues behind the scenes, but just talking with my kids, that it expands them into what they could expect in today's world. And I think it's very important that kids get that early on during their schooling, and Vestal definitely provides that diversity. The teachers, I think we have some of the best teachers out there. Every time we've reached out to teachers, they responded to us, whether it was a meeting or a parent-teacher conference. They're always available, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. How will I keep the board engaged? I will, like I said earlier, I will stay at the table. I will make sure that we keep what's important, which is everything. Academics, sports, clubs. I know several years ago there was talk of decreased funding, and there's a risk of losing modified sports. If you look at kids and their developmental stages in their life, it's probably the most critical time of their life when they're trying to find themselves. So Vestal has a lot of strengths, and I will make sure that we keep that board connected and engaged, and keep people there until we figure out a solution to the issue that's at hand.
Thank you. Dina?
Today, if you're looking for a place to live, you could go on the internet and look up a whole bunch of different facts, and some of the things that some of you folks mentioned are the strengths of our community. And we have a wonderful diversity of people in our community. We have a very high level of citizen education. We have a high percentage of people with college degrees and graduate degrees. We also have, in our schools, we have a lot of cutting edge programs where there are a lot of other districts and even BOCES who take ideas from us, our language program, special ed program, art, music, sports, and they utilize some of the things that we do because we are on the cutting edge. And you don't really have to look for, you pick any day, look on the calendar, and you could participate in, and you could see what our kids are doing. And the reason is the support of the community, the actions of the board, and also the teachers that we have who are constantly training. And being in three local districts as a substitute teacher, you hear people talk. They want to work in Vestal. That's the truth. They want what we have. And just the couple of facts of hearing that a lot, and also people trying to implement some of the courses and some of the actions we took is really a feather in our cap. We're doing the right thing, and I hope that we will continue doing the right thing. And I just, wanted to say that I just hope to be able to bring to the boardroom the many experiences I have and my unique view from being in around other communities and seeing what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Well, one of the things, again, having the military background, when I retired, I had the unique position to move anywhere in the United States. And I chose to move my family back to Vestal so they could get the same education that I received. That's how, again, my oldest son, he is a true military brat. By the time he was in 5th grade, he had been in 11 different schools. So I got to see California schools. I got to see how Northern Maryland, how upstate New York, because we were in 3 different schools. We were in Oswego, we were in 2 different schools in Syracuse, and then we were in another school in Maryland. So we got to see how many different states their education system worked while I was traveling all over the United States serving. And when I retired, they're like, where would you like to go back to? And I chose to bring my family back to Vestal. That's how solidly I felt my children would get an education. And I feel the best way to engage people, going to the second part of your question, is listening to what they want. Many times throughout this past year, surveys were sent, the majority was speaking. I feel listening to the way people are speaking and listening to what they are asking for is the best way to listen to the majority.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. On the flip side, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing our district? And you're first, Kathy.
We have unforeseen challenges. We can say that we have the obstacle of returning to school right in front of us. We have the obvious, and then we have the unforeseen. All of what has happened in the past year has not been individualized. It's accelerated other issues. We are right at this point in time, we're a declining population in our area. And so we need to address the future with less class size. When the kid's dad graduated from Vestal High School, he had over 700 kids in his class, and it's not that way anymore. And it's a declining population, which will make it difficult for us. You know, it impacts our funding. It impacts a lot of things. So we are going to have to make sure that what we are doing as a board is focusing on our goals, our outcomes, making sure that we are agree upon what the goals are, and using our resources to the best of our ability in the future, and really working hard at making the environment of these schools both prosperous in, as far as learning and as far as safety. And it has to be safety for not only just the kids, but the kids and the teachers, the paraprofessionals, our staff, our administration, our bus drivers. Everyone needs a safe and positive environment in which to work and learn. And that is going to be a challenge in the upcoming year. And what I've learned through the past year in the COVID Command Center is that what you do one week, it might completely change by the next week. We had governor on at 11 o'clock every Tuesday telling us the new travel plans, and the hospital would have to completely change all the policies within a week. And it's no one's fault. No one is to blame. It is, you need to work with it, and you need to move forward, and you need to work as a team to implement what needs to be done that is state mandated or federally mandated. And there's things that it's unforeseen. We don't know exactly. We did learn that we don't know what's going to happen. And we need a strong, strong team with goal-oriented focus and positive outcomes in order to really be successful.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes, thanks, Amy. The challenges moving forward, I think I started noticing it at the first Zoom meeting that the state mandated back in August. And I almost exited the chat at the time, but I stayed strong and remained there. And I just feel that there's a lot of frustration out there with especially parents, and rightfully so, of not understanding what the school's up against. And it backs back into communication. And the school is a business. Any business, the number one failure of a business is going to be communication. And I think that's one of the challenges we have moving forward is how do we communicate with the constituents with as far as what can the board say, what the board cannot say. You know, we talk about transparency, being transparent. I know there's a lot of things the board cannot be transparent about. However, I think there needs to be a conversation, and me included, of understanding what can we truly talk about to the public and what can we not talk about. I think there's some obvious items there that everyone knows we can't talk about. But I think having a clear understanding with the constituents of what we can and can't moving forward, I think will help the turmoil that's out there. So there's a clear understanding and there's trust. I do have to believe that the current board has done all they can. I mean, I'm not a tech savvy guy, and it seems like it's the younger generation people that are. And I heard comments that, well, we just figured this out. It's been happening for 8 months as far as the Zooms go. I have to believe that the Vestal board was doing their best, that they could, what they knew at the time. So I think transparency, the one thing is back to communicating. The one challenge that I'm going to challenge the board with is addressing, if the board member gets a letter from somebody, at least acknowledge it personally, that it was received and hopefully it was read. There's just an undertone out there with especially the parents of saying, I don't even know if you got the letter, let alone read the letter. Now, I did get responses back from Kay when I've written letters in the past, but I haven't gotten any responses back from any board members saying that they actually read it. And so that's one thing I will promise everybody that's listening and not listening is if I get 100 emails in 1 week, there will be 100 responses going back, because the breakdown of any business is communication. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have as a board moving forward is how do we get that communication to be clear, concise, and with as many facts as we have at the given day it's given. Thank you.
Thank you. Dino?
To continue on that vein with communication, I do feel it's important, and in my 3 short years that I've been on the board, I made sure of certain actions that would bring about better communication. I felt it was one of our areas of weakness, and we may not be at the finish line, but things are, for those of you who have called and talked to me, you know that I was instrumental in getting a lot of the board member information available to the public, and to actually have a site where we as a board can look at all communications that came to the school, either the clerk or the board. But speaking of the challenges, besides continuing with opening up communication. I think that the reopening of school is going to be our most immediate challenge, and it's a real dynamic instrument because you need a plan that's flexible and also able to be changed with the changing situations and guidelines. And that's why I feel that as an immediate concern, that would be our biggest challenge, is the reopening. Secondly, which ties together a couple of different of our aspects of this community, is that we live in the grayest county in the state, and many of the towns are seeing that the population is changing, and as the demographics are changing, it changes our finances. And although this may not be an immediate concern, this is something that would be foolish to ignore now. So I believe that our financial situation in the district may be a challenge that needs constant attention, and also to address it even when time, especially when times are good. And just to reiterate some of the things I've already heard say, for me, having a school that's safe and efficient for all involved is the paramount importance. And that's why it's always a continuous challenge for any district to make sure that everybody is safe, whether they are students there or workers, and teachers and administrators. Everyone needs to be safe. We have a great group of people to work with, and that's why I'm not worried about these future challenges. I've seen what folks in our district and in our community and what they do, especially when times are hard. And that's why I really have a lot of faith in overcoming these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
All right, I'm going to touch on a bunch of different things that Eric and Catherine and Dino just talked about, which will kind of wrap up everything. Communication is important, but we're in a global pandemic, and it's not only within our district, but with districts around us. The board could have communicated their plan with districts that were open and are safe and were open more. Again, Dino is talking that he is a substitute teacher in multiple districts, but he himself has not been substituting this whole year. He's said that multiple times. Catherine was talking about how it has to be safe for all involved, para and administration, and that is absolutely key. Vestal's own record, we've had more cases than other districts who are open more than Vestal has been. So other districts, and Eric, you were talking about transparency, correct? It's very important to be transparent. Why are we not communicating with Emmy, UE, Windsor, who are open, who have had less cases? Clearly, they were able to figure out something that Vestal was not. Why are we not talking with our brothers and sisters over the river and through the woods? We are not some insular county where what we do here doesn't affect everybody. Being smart and safe and transparent and communicating doesn't just mean with us, because we are doing sports which involve everybody throughout our region. Other districts were able to do things, and we are not communicating effectively. Communication involves talking with everybody, not just with our district, but everybody around. One of the things that I think happened this year, which cannot happen ever again, is that fear immobilized the community, and it stopped the board from making active decisions. So what has to happen is you have to have leadership to make the hard decisions. And then you can communicate, be transparent, and allow the board to move forward. For month after month after month, nothing was moving forward. It was a wait and see approach, and there was no action, which became inaction, which became reactionary to nothing. While other districts were moving forward and progressing, Vestal stood still. That can't happen again.
Thank you. Dr. Agneshwar?
Hey, I think it's been so long I forgot the question. We're talking about challenges, right?
Yes. What do you believe is the biggest challenge for our district?
So the biggest challenge, I mean, there's many challenges right now. Obviously, the COVID pandemic is one, but that's going to be over. The cases are dropping, 10 to 14% a week, and by fall we should have this pretty much under control. So, there's so much guidance on that from the state and CDC, and there's so many other organizations that have input into this that I'm not sure, not being on the board and privy to those conversations, I'm not sure that they can just make unilateral decisions about it. But the biggest challenge that I see is maintaining our level of education. Now, the biggest stakeholders in the public school system are the students, then the parents, and then the taxpayers. I don't have kids in school, but my tax bill, I would love to share with all of you. So we all have a stake in it, but the biggest stakeholders are the students. This is where young boys become men. They decide how they're going to proceed with their education, whether to go to college, whether to go to trade school. This is where they listen to mentors. Other school districts and maybe some of these are larger than ours in different areas in the state, seem to keep their diverse curriculum up in terms of offering a large amount of AP classes. I know we have an IB program. We can also, in order to move forward, the challenge is going to be how do we keep our kids at the top-notch educational level that they've been getting in, say, my generation or my kids' generation. Schools all across the country are getting better and better and better. Obviously, there's going to be socioeconomic diversity in inner city school systems, but communities our size with our socioeconomic status, you look at schools, the scores are getting better. Now kids in grade schools in the cities have opportunities to go to after-school curriculums where they're learning languages and getting more education in chemistry and math. College admissions are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. I'm not sure when I went to Vestal High School, I could have gotten into Binghamton University. And I did pretty well, but kids all across our country are getting smarter. Educators have to be on top of their game. Students have to be brought up to a different level. The top 20% or 10% of students are always going to do well, whether there's a pandemic or not. Those kids are always going to do well. But what about the rest of the kids? How do you get the bottom 20% or 40% or the middle kids that can get swayed either way? How do you bring them up? And that's why the tool has always got to be sharp. That's why we always have to focus on what a school system does. Educate, educate, educate.
Thank you very much. Okay, Eric, you start with this question. One of our viewers asks, what is your plan to build and foster a more collaborative relationship between the Board of Education and the teachers?
What's my plan to build and foster a better relationship, you said?
Yes, between the board and the teachers.
Well, I would say the purpose of the board is to make sure that kids get a great education, okay? And in order to do that, we have to listen to the teachers, okay? So I think it would be who of the board to understand what the teachers are up against, where their shortfalls are as far as their needs, whether it's materials or time or whatever it is, so they can best provide that to our students. So I think having a direct line of communication and understanding the teacher's needs and not necessarily wants, but understand their needs, that we as a board seriously listen to that so that we can provide the best solution for the school at a reasonable cost. And I think what I've heard in the past is you know, I've heard from different people is Vestal teachers aren't the highest paid teachers, you know, and how do we maintain the great teachers that we have and we don't lose them to other school districts? So I think understanding that a relationship is critical. And as a doctor just said, it's about education, education, education. And in order to get there, we have to have the best teachers. We need to understand what they need to do their job. And even through this pandemic, you know, people have asked me when I've been out walking around, they said, you know, what would you do? And my response is I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because I don't understand. I don't know what the teachers' positions are. So in order to get to that point, the board has to step back, listen to the teachers, and see what their needs are. So I would make sure that I would make that connection and understand, because the education for our kids and the future kids is critical for the well-being of Vestal Central School District.
Thank you. Dina?
Before I was on the board and I was a member in the community, I actually remember walking with the teachers when they were picketing. And I'm hard to miss because I take up a lot of real estate. And I've seen in the last 3 years a really strong relationship, a positive relationship building between the teachers and the administration of central office and the Board of Ed. At least in my opinion, always seem to be very supportive of the teachers. And just wanting to say that I think it's important to have this wonderful relationship. It gets a lot more done. And, you know, historically, when you look at we have like 714 in the state. When you look at how long administrators stay and central office administrators, and the kids are in and out of high school in 4 years, it's the teachers that really stay. I always said as a teacher, I keep getting a year older and the kids stay the same age. It just didn't seem fair. But, you know, you see that it's the teachers that are the foundation of the school and the success in the school. And they always had our attention on the board. And I would like to say that I think currently we have the best relationship between the board and the teaching bargaining unit. And I would like to extend that to the other 5 bargaining units. And I think that things are only getting better in this short 3 years that I've been involved in the board. I could tell you that the relationship has been getting better, and not just the teachers bargaining unit, but with all the other 5 bargaining units. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
So one of the really nice things is my wife has her undergrad in early childhood education, and currently we're homeschooling. My wife is a type 1 diabetic, so we pulled all of them from school just because of health precautions. So we had to pick curriculum. And so one of the main things that the Board of Education does is help shape the curriculum that every child is going to be taught. So understanding curriculum is really vital. Both of my mother and father-in-law are both high school teachers as well. So it's really vital that the Board of Education understands that the curriculum fundamentally that we are going to be imposing on the high school, middle school, and elementary school children, so that we understand what we are asking our teachers to teach. From a fundamental perspective, if it's not a good curriculum, and then we ask them to get the children ready for the regions or for the state assessments. We need to be willing to have that conversation and be willing to talk to the teachers. So meeting them one-on-one or collectively and having those dialogues and learning the curriculum, not doing it rote, but understanding what we're imposing on the children, on the teachers is really important. We learned that teaching it at all three levels, how important understanding the curriculum is, especially this year, before you impose it mass wide, especially with the constant changing curriculums. After I graduated, No Child Left Behind came in, and that was a shift from the curriculum. I'm sure when Dr. You were in the 70s and then it was in the 80s. It's constantly changing the state requirements, and new curriculums have to come out. And then as if we're elected, you have to know what you're imposing on the teachers.
Thank you. Dr. Agneshwar?
So I think a lot of the candidates touched on a lot of good points. You know, I'm not familiar with the intricacies of how the board functions. I've not been on the board, but I would assume that they would deal with all the stakeholders, whether they be teachers, parents, students, and the community at large. As far as the teachers go, you know, Eric's right. This is like a sports team. You know, you want LeBron, you got to pay him. You want good educators, you got to make sure they're well taught, well trained, and you got to, in order to keep them from going to other districts for more money, you got to pay them and you got to support them. There shouldn't be teachers having to go and spend their own money to buy pencils and pens and paper for their classes. There shouldn't, not in a school district with a budget of $80 million. There shouldn't be teachers out there having to have kids fundraise to raise money for a trip. You know, when I was in grade school back in the early 1800s, we used to have field trips to Philadelphia, to New York, to Washington, D.C. when I was in 6th grade, 5th grade. You know, now they go to Wegmans. So again, that's also part of education. And I think, you know, teachers love to teach, right? Doctors love to take care of patients. Teachers love to teach. Let them do what they are meant to do. Give them the resources that they need to teach. Now, like in any profession, I'm sure there are rules of engagement and rules, you know, different things, that standards that they have to stand up to. And those are, you know, probably done by the state or whoever. But teachers, whether it's special ed, K through 12, they need to teach. Okay, we need to provide them an environment where it's safe to teach, where it's funded, supported, not just by the Board of Ed, by the parents, by the students, by the taxpayers, and the whole community.
Thank you. Kathy?
So the original question again was the relationship between the board and the teachers, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So I guess I would start with, what are the current barriers? We'd have to outline what the current barriers are. What are the relationship issues, if there are any, if we can define them, so that we can, if we're going to tackle something, we need to know what we're working toward. I would also ask the teachers how they would feel, how to build the relationship, because relationship building is not one-sided. Relationship building is multi-sided. And then talking up to, you know, with following up from Jeff with curriculum, I come from healthcare. I need, board members also need to know their place. We need to know that there are experts in the field of education, of curriculum. And so we need to listen to those who are teaching. We need to listen to the people who are actually implementing what is mandated by the state and by the government. There's things that our hands are tied, and the teachers are going to be the ones to be able to guide us in the curriculum piece of it, and the board needs to support what is necessary, what is required, because at this point, there's things that our hands are tied. And if we don't like what is happening, there's a different way, but anger and complaining is not one of them. We need to change things the correct way. However, having said that, in the meantime, when we are required to teach what we're teaching, we need to support our classrooms, our students, and all the people involved in teaching. Once again, I'm going to circle back to the theme that I have, is outlining the common goals. If we all have a common goal that is reflective of a positive outcome, we can only be successful if we work together.
Thank you. Dino, I believe you're first for this question. What is your opinion and goal moving forward into the next school year as it relates to returning all students in the district to a 5-day school week? And how do you reassure parents who have left the district that now is a good time to return and have confidence that children will receive the strong education that Vestal is known for?
I think most citizens in this country and in other countries, they're looking for going back to what was normal or pre-COVID situation. We're going to get there, and hopefully we'll be getting there very soon. I would say that I would continue to heed the guidelines given to us by the county health department. And we would also continue to listen to the community like we did recently for the 4-day reopening. Considering last year, when I went away for a weekend and I came back and realized that the state was closed, we have come a long way since then. And for people who are on this panel right now, who have traveled and seen what some of the world's worst diseases can do. I know I've seen several decades ago when Ebola first reared its head, and I have to say that the guidelines that the county gives us are for a good reason, and that we need to be sure to follow the guidelines so that everyone in the school, children, workers, teachers, and everyone who brings the kids to school and who feeds the kids in our school, that they all will be safe. So we have been doing a good job. Much of our COVID numbers are actually community contact COVID, and they were not from the school. So I just wanted to make clear that we did have high numbers of COVID in Vestal, but much of that came from some of the housing and homes we had for the elderly and for the impaired. And even though our schools are a social situation, we didn't have spread through the schools. We had spread through the community. And there may have been a lot of quarantining going on, but truthfully, that's to make sure that the schools weren't spreading. And I will say that when we go back to 5 days a week, it's because it's safe to go back to 5 days a week, and that any transfer we may have will probably again be community transfer and not transfer from our schools. And thank you for letting me speak about that.
Thank you. Jeff?
My stance is other districts are doing it. I work at one of them that is doing it. I feel there's no reason Vestal can't do it. So I am all for having the kids back 5 days a week. I was back when 75% when the survey said we can do it, and there were two current Board of Education members who are pushing for 5 days a week, and the rest of the board is unwilling to even discuss it. So I'm not sure what Dino is talking about. A lot of them, when you talk to them one-on-one, say when it's safe. The current Board of Education, when they're saying when it's safe, the current board has taken an ultra conservative view and they're not willing to move forward. I don't know what safety protocol or what they're willing to move or what they're waiting for. My stance, if elected, will be the children need to be in 5 days a week. Because your tax bill, my tax bill isn't for 4 days a week. We're not getting an adjustment. The teachers are getting paid for 5 days a week. I'm paying my taxes for 5 days a week. I am pushing for 5 days a week. I will, if elected, because again, my vote will be one of 9 people on the board. I will push for 5 days a week.
Thank you. Dr. Agneshwar?
So, in medicine, there's something that we use called best practices. A lot of institutions use them. Physician organizations use them. And what they do is they take practices from your community. Best practices may not be the same here as in California. So we base our guidelines, our local standard of care, on what our region is like. And we use those in our practice every day. Now, what we have seen over the last several weeks is the rate of COVID infections dropping. The transmission rate we all know in children is extremely low. The CDC came out with 3-foot distancing for schools some time ago now. And as with any guideline, it's open to interpretation. But I think if we use a best practice method and talk to other school districts in our area and find out what they're doing and why. See, it's no use sending out a survey if you're not going to use the data. Okay. If you want to hear what people have to say, you're not doing it just, if I send out surveys to my patients asking what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, and I don't use that to make my business better, then I shouldn't have sent the survey out in the first place. So I think everybody should be if we have the trajectory that we're in now, there's no way that we shouldn't be back to normal in September. New York State has almost 60% of this population has had one shot or more, we had 24 cases in Broome County today. They've closed the COVID units in the hospitals here. This is not Brooklyn. This is not Queens. This is not Detroit. This is not Minneapolis. This is Vestal, New York. And the CDC, although they have, now remember, the CDC makes guidelines for the entire nation. They don't make guidelines for Vestal, New York. It is up to the state, and even the state says it's up to the local communities to decide what's best for ourselves. So we can quote CDC, CDC, CDC all the time, but it's open to interpretation. They make guidelines based upon a diversity of a population, hotspots, the whole country. I think we're unique here. We have a high rate of vaccination. We have caseload that's very low. And Rochelle Walensky, who's the CDC director, also made a statement some time ago saying that children are suffering from emotional and mental breakdown as a side effect of this pandemic. And all of us, whether we're teachers, professionals, community at large, have to take it into consideration. These are our children. How is this going to affect them when they do go back to school? Are they going to be afraid to go to class? Are they going to be afraid to play a sport? Are they not going to have friends because of, there's such a psychological impact of this. And it's going to make us kind of redouble our efforts to not only get back to school 5 days a week, but integrate everybody so we're not afraid anymore. And that's really where we should be headed.
Thank you. Kathy?
I completely agree with Dr. Agneshwar. It is best practice, and we need to follow science. And science is beginning to tell us to open up, and opening up is a challenge. And we talked about how things change rapidly. And we need to be able to change the plan quickly and without fault and without anger if things were to change in a different direction. So opening up is very important. 5 days a week is ideal. Oftentimes, we all know an ideal situation isn't necessarily a real situation. At this point in time, it is definitely moving toward the ideal situation. And it's we need to definitely begin to move in that direction. Having said all that, there are going to be people who are nervous and anxious about the return, and that is very, very real to them, and that is okay too. So there also needs to be a component of option and choice so that all children, as a parent, all children have the same opportunity within their own comfort levels. And we need to work together in order to provide the best environment in which to learn. And that might be 3 days a week for some families, 4 days a week for some families. And that is a huge challenge to our poor instructors and our teachers and everyone involved. But it would be temporary. It's not the end. It's not forever, but it is a stepping stone. And we need to acknowledge that everybody is on a different trajectory in this journey and path. And all of it, everything everyone is feeling about this is okay. It's a challenge. It's hard. And none of us have been through this before. And holy cow, let's hope it never happens again. But we need to be together and on the same team with a common goal and the same outcomes. You're getting the theme.
Thank you. Eric?
All right, thank you, Amy. In my opinion, my goal would be 5 days a week. I don't believe there's any kind of substitute for in-person learning. I think kids they lose so much from the not having that interaction with their teachers, their classmates, from a social standpoint. I think what was said was there's a lot of anxiety coming from this and a lot of mental angst as well that these kids are suffering from. That being said, we would have to consider safety. I've heard just recently that a lot of people are saying it's kids, it's no different than the flu. It might be true for some. I think if we as people start to turn outwards instead of inwards and start to understand it's not all about me, maybe it's about the other person. I just heard today that there's some young kid that has an enlarged heart. How would you feel if your child went to school and was infected by the school having loose protocols? So I think there's a balance with that. My goal and objective would be 5 days, but I think we have to take into effect the safety aspect of it too. I do believe that by the end of summer, I'm not a doctor. I consider myself a doctor of the woods, not a doctor of medicine, but we have to take that into account. I think also collaborating with other school systems that are at a different phase than we are, that have taken that next step into more days than the conservative approach that Vestal has had, I think would be who of the school board to cross communicate. We talked about that already. And I think as far as the reassuring the parents, I think it goes back to communicating and trusting that the communications we're being as transparent as we can, and that we release this information to give all the parents enough time to react. And again, I think as a whole, I think we tend to think about ourselves as individuals and not necessarily other people. And I think if we were to do that as a whole, I think the outcome might be a little bit different. I think it's human nature for us to do that. It's all about me. It's not about we. So, and a comment was made about the teachers working 5 days a week. These teachers are not working 5 days a week. They're working 6, 7 days a week. It's hard on our teachers, and it's very, very stressful. So I'm sure a lot of the teachers would love to go back. But there again, I think going back to the previous question, how would you foster that relationship with the teachers and tie that in with this one? I think really, truly understanding what the teachers feel, where their comfort zone is, and they're with our kids every day, 5 days a week. And sometimes they see things that we don't see. So as far as reassuring the parents, as a board member, I would have to say that I will listen to all the data that is given to us, the guidelines, listen to you parents, listen to the teachers, and make the best informed decision possible for the Vestal Central School District. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Our next question, how would you ensure the social emotional needs of our students are being met along with their academic needs? And Jeff, that's your question.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, it broke up.
How would you ensure
Mhm.
how would you ensure the social emotional needs of our students are being met along with their academic needs?
Well, that kind of feeds into what we were just talking about, and going 5 days a week it's going to be a culture shock, especially for those kids who are kindergartners going into first, because a lot of them have never had, especially this first year, they've never had an in-person education. For many of them, this will be the first time. Some of them, especially if they were remote learning, this will be the first time they've ever gone to school for some of these kids. So it's going to be a culture shock. So in my mind, we're going to need to bring in some counselors. I strongly believe we're going to need to have mental health is going to be a huge component, not only for the faculty. We've gone through a traumatic experience as a world. Let's just call it, this has been, it's been quite the year. And for the record, what some people might be hearing as anger or frustration, don't equate that. It's passion. Again, I'm a military man, and I have resting Jeff face. So I don't show my emotion, but don't equate it as anger or frustration. It's passion. So I don't want to misconstrue that I might seem angry or upset. It's not at all. Going back to what Eric was just saying, I think the board needs to come more to the table and really find some money for bringing in counselors. Trauma counselors might be needed for the first month of school, and then every quarter have just a social mental health day to check on the kids, because no one knows how it's going to be next year, and make sure they're transitioning into school and see how these kids are. Not only for the teachers or the kids, but for the teachers, and really see how they're doing. A lot of these things could be budgeted, or see how that kind of goes. And I feel that really would be needed, in part with making sure, they're reading, writing, arithmetic, but making sure that everything is copacetic, because that is going to be, you can't learn if you're going through the trauma cycle. There's a couple, medical individuals here, but if you're stuck in that spiral, you're not going to be able to focus on anything. So, and we need to do some training over the summer for our teachers to make sure they can, if they see kids entering into that trauma cycle, that they're identified, and then they can get sent to the nurse or sent to the guidance counselors for the middle school or high school. So that's something that we do need to educate on before school starts for educators. If we need to bring in professionals so they can start seeing or identify that for themselves. These are very real things, especially I feel very strongly that we do need to teach about what PTSD is, and we might be dealing with that because of what going from remote to in person, or especially for our little ones, or going on.
Thank you. Dr. Agneshwar?
So, I mean, Jeff hit the nail on the head. I think I'm going to just coattail on him.
Welcome.
This is not something for guidance counselors. Teachers should not be burdened by dealing with mental health issues of the kids. You have to bring in professionals. You have to bring in child psychologists. Adult psychologists don't have the same perspective as child psychologists. Good luck finding them. But again, if you want them, you got to pay. These kids have been through something that they've never seen, and who knows if they'll ever see it. It's kind of like, probably like Jeff living through a war. It takes a toll. And there's also a social stigma too. Other kids may see kids, oh, you're going for counseling. Oh, what are you, a sissy, this, that. So you need professionals to come in and make it so that it's okay for that child to get counseling services. It's not wrong, because even the kid that's maybe doing the bullying needs counseling too, but they're just don't want to admit it. This is something that's probably beyond. Parents can give emotional support. It's hard to give psychological support. Teachers shouldn't be given that burden. We have all kinds of education, right? We have physical education, we have health education, we have sex education, no mental education. So the short answer to that is just bring professionals in that are trained child psychologists, and they have to assess basically almost every student, because students, especially young kids, they hide it. How many children hide abuse? How many children hide bullying? How many children hide drug use at home? The trained people are going to get this out, and that's the only way we move forward. It's a massive scale, and I can't even begin how the federal government, the state government is going to tackle this issue. But that's, Jeff hit the nail on the head. That's the long and short of it.
Thank you. Kathy?
I agree with both of them. Absolutely. We need to have counselors. We need to have child psychologists available and things. The other piece of it too, of course, being the physical therapist that I am, we have to also engage these kids in team building and constructive physical work, to be outside, to have these professionals outside on the playgrounds, to watch these kids in their own settings, in their own environments, and how they're interacting with one another, how they're interacting with adults. This is going to be the first time that they're going to be together on a playground with their classmates in over a year, things like that, to have more ability to learn in different ways. Can we take classrooms outside? Can we spread these kids out? Can we learn by using our hands? Can we learn not by just sitting inside, the same way that we've been doing it for the past year in front of screens, things like that. It's just, there's different perspectives on how to help. And I guess the best way is to assess the needs first and address the needs of these children. And once again, we can anticipate what we think we might know, but once again, this is going to also be a challenge of the things that we don't know. So we need to be open to all kinds of different options and ideas out there.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes, I think this is a huge thing moving forward with the emotional and social aspect of our children. And I do believe it's only going to get worse as we get more into this media and that sort of thing too. Like everybody said, you're going to have to bring in the professionals. It's definitely not a teacher's job. But the one aspect that I think that would help is, I mean, if I as a parent understands that my kid is struggling, I know there's some fear with some parents, I coached a baseball team. I had a parent come up to me and at the end of the game said, "Hey, my kid's not going to play for you any longer." And I said, "Okay, why?" And he had a disability. And I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me that?" And she says, "Because I didn't want you to know, because I didn't want you to treat him any different." And I said, "Well, as a coach, you would want to know that so I could coach him accordingly. Not that I'm a professional at doing that, but it would have helped." And I think the point being is, if the parents do engage and and say, "Hey, my child is struggling," I think that would be a small step. That being said, was already commented on, is kids need a safe place. There's me, I'm almost 49. Sometimes I don't feel safe, so if I don't feel safe, a kid's surely not going to feel safe. They need a safe place to be able to go there and say, "You know what, hey, I am struggling, and this is why I'm struggling." And that's going to be a challenge in itself. I think for any kid of that age, elementary all the way up through high school, to actually verbalize that is a huge feat in itself. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. And I think it's the parents, I would hope, would understand that as a board and as a community, we need to do this together. Okay. And we need to understand what needs to be done. Definitely professional counseling needs to be done, but identifying that and having the right system in place so no one is frowned upon or diminished or ridiculed only to make it worse, because that's only going to close people up. So, but that's a huge, I would also add that as a challenge moving forward. I think that's something that we need to consider. I don't think COVID is the end. I hate to say it, I think COVID is the beginning. I personally think we're going to see more of this moving down the road. Unfortunately, that was so effective. Somebody's going to have a crazy idea of doing something. Let's hope not. Thank you.
Dino?
In addition to addressing academic needs of our kids, the social and emotional needs obviously need to be directed too. And we have increased the amount of social workers and psychologists that are working for the district. But more importantly, something that could be done that I am still myself researching is that, people are saying, well, teachers can't do it. But the truth is, everybody could do it. Even students can do this. You have to train people to look for telltale signs of someone going off the deep end. And there are some signs that anybody could be trained to look for to save a life, because it's sad, but when we're all talking about, the emotional needs and the stress, but I've seen the other end of it too. And the ending is someone ends their life because it's too painful to live. And there were signs and there were warnings, but the people close to these folks couldn't read them. And I say, let's educate whoever may be involved with our kids, and even the kids themselves, to look for these things. It could be something simple, like sometimes a youngster will give away their jewelry and their possessions, or they might write something, or fixate on a song lyric or whatever it is. But we can all be trained to look for these signs and to help, in addition to contacting, God knows we're going to need it, as much of the social help and psychological help we can get for the kids and the staff. We've all been through a lot, and we still have not recovered. I can even speak for myself with that. I'm not the same man I was last year. And just to say that, yes, teachers, bus drivers, food service workers, custodians, administrators, we could all find these signs before something really drastic happens. And it would be very easy to do. And as I said, still conducting research in that before I bring it up to the board. Thank you for letting me say that.
Okay, I believe it's your turn, Dr. Agneshwar. There were very strong feelings about decisions made by the board regarding reopening our schools this year. How do you as a board member get input from all stakeholders, not just the ones who are reaching out due to dissatisfaction?
Okay. The lines of communication are either email, letters, go on the board meeting and voice of the public or whatever. I've listened to a few of them and I've heard the disgruntled parents and I've heard the level of discussion, and yeah, it's kind of a shame that you don't get the interaction, but I guess if there was interaction, it would probably go on all night. You just have to talk to everybody, right? Parents have representatives through the PTA. Students have class presidents, student leaders. Teachers have leadership, and there's community people that can also ask the right questions too. I think that's the easy part. The hard part is what do you do with the input? I mean, if you ask 100 people and 99 say, it's raining, you better buy an umbrella. And I think what's kind of happened is I think maybe the pandemic has kind of focused the board only on that and not on other issues. I don't know. I'm not privy to the discussion. I don't really want to speculate on what goes on. I'm sure they're trying to do the best they can. But sometimes that also needs a little change of scenery. As we see in politics, when people get dissatisfied with a certain way things are going, they vote, and that's the way the democratic process works. So I think if the voters out there feel that there's a direction that we're headed in that's not the direction that they feel is the right one, then the only way to change that is to vote. There is no other way. Communication has been out there. It used to be letters and people talking to each other on the street. That's gone to email and Facebook and open forums and things like that. I'll stick with the question. I want to go back to another one, but I'll stick with that. That's all I have to say.
Kathy?
Well, I guess I can say, isn't it easy to be a Monday morning quarterback? I think that everyone needs to realize that this has been moving the entire time, and that people make the best decisions they possibly can with the information that they have at the moment the decision needs to be made. And yes, we can all look back on decisions we've all made and wish maybe we had made a different decision or, progressed a decision or anything like that. I think ownership needs to be taken on both sides. I think every voice should be heard. And I think every voice needs to be respectful and kind when they're giving their opinions. So therefore, I'm thinking all stakeholders' input should absolutely be heard, and all stakeholders should be kind in their words with their input. That way we have a functioning, common, kind team in order to make change happen. We are going to be going forward in quite some crazy times. And that is one reason why I'm here, is because if not now, when? And I just believe that people need to be heard, and people need to be kind in their words and voices in order to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, Amy, I think that's a great question. And as I sit here thinking about that, the only thing I've heard I'm not on the board, obviously, hope to be. And the only thing I've heard is the parents. So how do you reach out to and get insight from all the stakeholders? I think my question would be is, do people like myself and the rest of you, do we understand how the teachers feel? Do we understand their position? And maybe everybody does. Maybe I'm the only outlier, but I surely don't. But I think it would be very important, and maybe we step out the box. You know, at my place we call let's burn the box. Let's do something different, and maybe we hold a session. Maybe it's not a board meeting. It's a special session where we have the teachers that are going to talk for an hour, and we have the taxpayers that are going to talk for the hour. We have the parents that are going to talk for the hour. They're both one and the same, but so we have all parties can hear what the other party is saying. I'm not so sure that is taking place. I think that would be a good step if it hasn't to do that. And I think there's a lot of people, and I think it's very common for the human society to say, okay, this isn't working for me. What are we going to do? And it's all about me, 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 me. We have to do this together, okay? And we can't do this together until we get to the point of understanding the other side and understanding why another side or party or constituent stakeholder is saying what they're saying. Until that happens, I'm fearful that we will not ever see eye to eye. So we have to get on some sort of a platform where we can have that dialogue, maybe not a dialogue, but just listen. Again, listen and hear. Thank you.
Dina?
What's wrong? Oh, am I on now? Could you guys
I can hear
me?
you now, yes.
Okay, I've been having trouble with some of the sound, and I hope it stays for my couple of minutes here. What I would like to say is that recently, when the guidelines have changed, and we as a district were asked to make a decision regarding the reopening that we did recently. And one of the statements was, having all the stakeholders input. That would be us sending out surveys to taxpayers and parents of students in the school. It was sending out notification and talking to the bargaining units of all the workers in the school. It was interviews of the kids in the school through various organizations that we had. And we were able to make a decision based on that. And we did move forward. And sometimes I get the feeling like, from what was said tonight, like there are these 9 skeletons with cobwebs on them sitting around a board table and not accomplishing anything. And nothing could be further from the truth. And each of us contributes so much in so many ways. And we all wanted our kids and workers to be safe, and we wanted them to be back in school. So, just to touch back on this, we did do what the question asked. We got information from all the stakeholders, and we did make a decision based on that survey. So there it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
So I'll pick up where Dino just left off, and then I'll touch what Catherine said and pick up with what Eric said. All you have to do is talk to people. It's communication. It's not that difficult. You talk, Eric he's a coach. You can talk to the kids and ask them what they want. You can talk to any of the parents or talk to the kids. The survey that Dina was just talking about, they asked teachers, students, parents, and stakeholders, do you want the kids back in school? Mark Browning was regaling everybody during the meeting when they were deciding for over 45 minutes, should we have the survey? How long should the survey go out? This, and he goes, it'll come back with about 75%. The board was shocked when it came back. Students, 75%, teachers, 75%, parents, 75%. Everybody wanted to come back 75%. The superintendent of schools was shocked that it came back 75%. Everybody wants to be in schools. The only people that weren't surprised was Christina Pierce and Mark Browning, who called that it would be about 75% of people would be wanting to be back in school. After they got the 3-day, 4-day time frame, it took another week before they got people back in school. Christina Pierce and Mark Browning wanted to push the button that day. The board sat for another week. That is inaction at its finest. They knew what the results were going to be because Mark called it. The board, rather than getting that result, they had a special meeting. I watched the special meeting. You can find it on YouTube. They did nothing for another week because they weren't ready, once they got the results, to move forward. That is what can't happen. When you have results, you need to go forward and make a decision. This is not me being angry. This is me being passionate. This is what we need on the Board of Education, is when you have direct information, acting on that information. If you have the majority, 75%, saying we want to be in school, you need to put the kids in school.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, this is your question. How important is it to you to include the needs of students with disabilities in Vestal school policy? And do you consider it a priority to keep special education programs active within the district?
Thank you, Amy. Oh, what a passion. Obviously, being in healthcare and a therapist, I am all about early child intervention and all kind of any special needs for children. So I had told you all that I had originally had planned on, putting my children somewhere else. Well, both of them needed speech therapy services. And in order for them to get speech therapy services regularly and not me take time off work to go drive them to their therapy and return them to school, it's pushed in with the public school system, which is how we started. And what a wonderful intervention. And we are where we are meant to be. Special education is near and dear to my heart, and I feel as though it needs to be a priority. Children have all types of abilities within their abilities, and it needs to be fostered and grown, and in all different ways. And so I find that not only just special needs, but even children who are feeling left behind or left out, they're socially or emotionally or anything like that, especially with what's going on here. You have your athletes. My son was not an athlete by any means, but he loved his social ties. He loved his, PTLW club, and he did things that fit him. And Beth is, of course, she can't get off the field, and so each child has their own abilities. And so we need to foster these kids in every way, shape, or form. As far as, children with needs, these kids need they need a priority. They need to be taken up as priority too. And I know Vestal has done a great job However, there's always room for improvement for integrating these children and coming up with plans with these children and doing more. I hope that answers the question without going into too much. So.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, actually, I find this question very interesting. And I was a special needs child. I'd be very vulnerable in saying that to everybody. I had speech therapy class from kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade. The only person that could understand me was my brother. I stuttered so bad, and thank God that that was available to me. And when it comes to special needs, I don't see them being any different than any of my kids or anybody's kids that are listening here tonight. They're all created by God, and I think they're very special. And so the one thing that I did here, I took the opportunity to walk around the neighborhood, and a couple people asked me about special needs. And they shared with me that when you're talking with other families in other districts, the first question they ask is, well, where do you go to school? And resounding, now I don't know this for a fact, but this is one of the questions that I have for the board when I get there is why? Is when you say Vestal, it's, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if it's true, but I'm gonna, if I'm so fortunate to get elected, I am going to talk with the board and ask, why are we perceived as being so bad for special needs kids? And I think it's something that if we're so good at academics, we're so good at athletics, we have all these clubs, why aren't these special needs kids just as important? And to treat them any different than anyone else, people come here for the education system. That's be a comprehensive educational system that takes care of all people. I'm sure the answer is going to come down to money. Well, I think it's only going to continue to grow as we get further down. I've seen data on kids that are in front of a screen the whole time. You're going to get more ADHD. It's going to become an issue. So I think it's something moving forward as the Central Vestal School District, we need to be thinking about as a district, as board members, how are we going to take care of the special needs? So I will definitely keep that active and elevate that even more, and to figure out why we are not that school that people want to come to for special needs.
Dina?
I wanted to start by saying that in my 30 plus years being active in education, I welcomed all the federal and state mandates regarding the education of special needs, special education in general. And I also want to say that as a board, the thing that we do is make policy, which is why I thought it was very important to be part of the policy committee, because really there's some hearings and there's some meetings, but that's what the board does. And a lot of the policy that is coming out now is to cover the mandates regarding special education. And as I said, I welcome the changes that I've seen throughout the years because they've only been better for kids with special needs. I also wanted to say that we hire people on the board, we approve hirees, and we know where they're coming from, we know their background, and we know if they can fit into our programs. And a lot of that has to do with our special programs. And there are a lot of folks involved with each of these areas that the kids need help in. And superficially, and why people might say, oh, I'm sorry, you want to have the community be able to send their kids to our school and that we'll be able to give the kids the best experience. Sometimes due to numbers, we can't. There are certain programs that are regulated to have maybe 8 children in the class or up to 8. And if you have 2 children who need that type of class, there is no dynamic in the classroom with 2 kids. And there's no education going on. And so therefore, yes, some of the kids may be sent to a program in BOCES where they do have the 8 kids in the class, where the construction of that program will work effectively. So I think it's gravely important to be able to give the child the best program they could have and the best education. And for over 99.9% of the kids, it's here, but there are going to be some times when it's not. And I think that's where that sorrowful comment may be coming from with other people who don't perhaps know the background of what's going on. I've been around too, and I talk to people. I think the only reason why people say, you know, oh, Vestal, is because they tell me that my taxes are too high. But actually, one of the things I looked for was high taxes. It means it's the better place to live. So we have developed programs. And again, I said this with another question. We are actually on the cutting edge of some special ed programs to the point where other districts and BOCES ask us, well, hey, what are you guys doing? So we're doing a great job. And I don't think that's going to change because of the passion of the members of the Board of Ed and how they know and want the best. And I'll also add, there's a lot of reading with this job. And I don't complain about it, but I do want to say that about 95% of the reading has to do with the special ed program. And I don't mind it at all. I want to be informed and I want to be able to make an intelligent decision. And I need information to do that. So I read. And I'm telling you that it's in the 90% of the research and reading time that I spend is for the special education program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
So one of the reasons I'm retired so early, and you can kind of see I'm starting to get shaky, is I have early onset Parkinson's. So I'm not shaking my head no at all of you. It's my meds are starting, it's about 20. So I'm not trying to shake no at all of you. So I apologize that, but I let everybody know so I'm good. So ADA, American with Disabilities Act, I am all for it. But the whole, just give me 1 sec. So we're talking about disabilities. My oldest has had an IEP, an individualized education plan, since he was 2. So I am very intimately familiar with IEPs and 504s. He's also in the 1211 program, and he has been. So again, I've seen in California and Maryland, upstate New York, and now in Vestal, we actually just had his yearly educational program meeting for when we transition him from homeschool to back to Vestal when he starts 10th grade. So one of the things, Eric, you kind of mentioned it earlier, one of the fundamental issues is, and Amy, I appreciate the question, but we shouldn't have to ask this question. People with disabilities aren't second-class citizens. So the fact that we are even talking about this is quite frankly ridiculous. I'm no different than anybody else. I just have issues. So we shouldn't be even having to talk about what they need or what any of us need. People learn differently, whether you're autistic, whether you have any issues. We just need to provide for education. It's no different than whether you're a visual learner, you're a mix of visual and auditory. Everybody just needs to, if we are the board, we just need to provide, period. And that's really the only answer. We don't, whether you have any issues is kind of irrelevant, but the fact that it's 2021 and we're actually still asking what we're going to provide for someone with disabilities, and then we're spending 10 minutes talking about we just need to educate regardless of what the person needs. It's our job to provide it. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Agneshwar?
Well, I think everybody's kind of said in a nutshell what everybody would agree with. I think one of the things you have to understand is that special needs is not just dyslexia and autism. It's emotional, it's physical, and it's wide ranging. And no public school system in the country is equipped to handle all types of special needs. We have to try our best, but sometimes someone with, say, severe non-communicative autism is better off at, say, BOCES or a different setting. It would be folly and naive to think that we can just go and help everybody in a public school system with the resources that we have. We need to get the best for every single child. And sometimes the best is not in a traditional public school setting. Maybe that's at BOCES, maybe that's at BU, maybe that's in a different setting. If you want kids to thrive, no matter what the disability, then I think you have to be willing to sit down and figure out what's best for this child and what's best for the other children. Part of the thing about special eds is they need socialization. You can't have two parallel classes, so to say. You can't. They need to socialize with each other. When I was a kid going to Vestal school, all the special ed kids were in one classroom and they never came out. So we never got to see them and they never got to see us. You want to include these children and make them part of the school community. Socialization is a must. But it also means doing what's best individually for each kid. Every kid's disability may not be the same as everybody else's. So to lump them all in and say, oh, well, they're all special ed doesn't make any sense. It's not good for the children that have the disability. So I think we have to kind of look at it, and we don't have unlimited resources. So we're a public school system. And I think there's a lot of different opportunity, maybe not so much in our community, but I know, for instance, BU has a great autism program. I've had patients of mine move to this area because of that. BOCES, my daughter worked at BOCES in the summer with severely handicapped children, and they do a great job up there. There's professionals that are trained to do it. And I think Dino hit on this. So that's the thing. We can take care of a large percentage of these children, but we have to do a service to the children that have the disability and their parents and the community, and put them in the place that's going to help them the most.
Thank you. Okay, for our last question tonight, BOCES is talking about offering virtual remote teaching as a service. This year, asking teachers to do both kinds of instruction has proven extremely problematic. Would you be in favor of us utilizing remote instruction as a service for families that choose remote in September? And I believe it's your turn, Eric.
That's a great question. I think, again, it goes back. I don't believe one shoe fits all. I mean, some kids learn better in person. Some people learn better virtually. My understanding, and again, it's my understanding, I could be wrong, but you mentioned BOCES, and from what I've gathered is that some of the special ed kids or special need kids, I should say, go to a lot of the BOCES programs. And so I guess I'll speak from that perspective. And from that, and what was just said, there's a much bigger umbrella that has to be considered than just virtual learning. There's a lot of social aspects that are missed. And we had the question earlier about, the whole social and emotional. aspect of it. So I think it's one of those questions that it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be very hard to pinpoint a yes or a no. I think it goes back to depending on the child and their learning aspect. If that was an option, again, then we go back to saying, well, now the teachers go back to doing some virtual, some in class, when we really want to get the kids back in school 5 days a week. So I think having the ability to do it is going to be dependent on the person or the child needs at the time.
Thank you. Dina?
If I'm understanding your question, you're asking the validity or usefulness of a BOCES fully remote virtual learning program.
That is how I would interpret it also.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm still on board with you guys, and I'll answer the question now. I think that this is a very easy answer. No, it should be done in-house. And the reasons for this start with we're moving to an era, hopefully, where there is not going to be any virtual learning going on, or there'll be a lot less of it. We already have the program in place. We already have the folks who are handling this very well. And, you know, we have support staff, you know, our SROs who take care of the security in the buildings. They were driving around delivering Chromebooks. They delivered one to me and made sure that, you know, the kids got their Chromebooks. And then we went further to make sure that we had internet connection for these kids. And this isn't going to happen somewhere else but in Vestal. This is part of my previous answer. You asked about what was so special here. That's one of the things that's special here. You know, you don't even have to ask, these people want to do for the community. And in that situation, I would wholeheartedly say, no, I do not see a value in having BOCES do this virtual program, because we are doing it and we have all the mechanisms in place. And it's going to be, this is really a question that's kind of dying off. As a matter of fact, we had probably 5 out of our 8 questions had to do with COVID. As many of you have noticed, the numbers are going in our favor. Things are getting better. More people are getting vaccinated and are allowed to get vaccinated. And I don't think there really is an issue here, but I'm just going to stand with, let us take care of this in-house, because we have some real good, caring people taking care of the virtual learning, the full remote learning.
Thank you. Jess?
I don't see a reason to contract the curriculum out to BOCES in this case for a full-time virtual learning, unless there would be a reason. So say someone got injured and they were going to be out for a long time, but again, that could be done in-house. So I don't see why we would be paying BOCES for teaching our children what they could be done when we've proven the curriculum in-house already. So I'm not understanding why we would be doing that. It doesn't make sense to me. So I would vote against that, because then that's setting up a third-party contract when we have teachers who we're paying. So why would we go to a third-party vendor when we're already in-house able to? It doesn't make sense to vendor outside. So no, I don't understand the premise.
Thank you. Dr. Agneshwar?
So, you know, I agree with Jeff. I mean, you shouldn't outsource it to I mean, we have teachers that are qualified. We have teachers that are good. Let them teach in person. That's where learning really is. Now, that being said, virtual learning has been a part of this country for a long time, just not during the pandemic. You know, many universities, medical schools, you know, tape the lectures and you can go watch them on a computer. You don't have to get out of your bed to go to class. Is it ideal? It's good for some people, but it's not good for others. There's not a lot of interaction. Now, could virtual learning be part of a curriculum? I mean, you can get your degree from University of Phoenix. You can get a law degree online. You can get almost anything online. And what is that? That's virtual learning, right? You still have to meet certain professional standards, whether it's a law degree, you got to pass the bar, whether it's an accounting degree, you got to take your CPA. So no matter how you learn, but that's different. That's professional studies. Kids need to not just learn from teachers in person, but they also need to socialize. And I think you're missing a really strong point of going. What's the point of going to school? It's not just to learn, but it's learning to socialize, right? It's learning to be with other kids of different ethnicities, different socioeconomic status, interacting with, am I allowed to say this, boys with girls and girls with boys? It's just, that's the whole purpose of school. Play on a team. What's the purpose of playing on a team? Not to win every game, but to learn how to win with dignity and lose with dignity. Because life is like that. You're going to lose in life. You're going to win in life. School teaches us that stuff. If you're blossoming in art and music and you have a place in school where you can paint or you can draw or you can sing, that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to get good. Maybe you have a parent that doesn't think you have an artistic mind. They want you to go be an engineer. Whereas you get a teacher that becomes your mentor that now says, wow, you got a talent here. You're not going to get that online. Children are sponges. Children need to learn by seeing, by touching, by doing, by feeling, and socializing. Virtual learning can be a part of anything. Maybe it'd be great to have virtual learning as an after-curricular. You want extra lessons in calculus. You want extra lessons in chemistry. You want extra lessons in geometry. Yeah, log on to this website and it'll give you a bunch of different stuff that you can do extra curricular learning. But traditional school is, I think, going to school, learning, and going home.
Thank you. Kathy?
So I totally think that this question evolved because what I originally heard, and as everyone is talking, I kind of developed my own thoughts. So I don't know, maybe Eric wants to re-go again, because it kind of evolved. My thought, I guess, is this. I like the supplemental idea. So if a child is needing extra help in something, virtual is a great way to do it. I also know of a family whose child has never been a great student in person. And since this all happened, he has excelled. And so we do have to keep in mind that there are children that learn in different ways. And so to absolutely say a hard no on virtual learning might take away another child's thriving opportunity. Now, we'd have to weigh, and this is where the all stakeholders' input would really come into play. How difficult is that? Because then you have teachers preparing two separate lesson plans, one for in-person, one for virtual. That's a nightmare. And I get that. And I understand that. So I'm not, I guess, gosh, I guess I would have to say, I would need to know more about on both sides to have a truly educated answer on this. I would love to say, yes, let's do everything for everybody. And I know that's not realistic. So I think that I would need to find out more of the purpose, more of the resources required and all of that to formulate the best answer. And I apologize for that. So.
Thank you. Before we sign off, I want to just send out a few thank yous. I want to thank Cliff for setting up the webinar for me. And I want to thank all of you who submitted questions. I apologize if we didn't get to your question. There were a lot of great questions and I tried to get to as many as I could. And I want to thank all the candidates for spending your evening with us. And just a reminder that the vote is next Tuesday, May 18th. You're not only voting for our Board of Education candidates, but also on our school budget. There are 3 openings for the Board of Ed, so the top 3 vote getters will be elected. And on that note, I hope you all have a good evening and good luck to all of you.
Thank
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Hi, all of you.
Good luck,
Bye.
everybody.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.
everyone.
You too.
Nice to meet all of you too.
Bye-bye.
Nice job, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.